Okay, and again, thank you so much for everyone who's joining us. We have so much to go over today, so I just want to make sure that we have everything and we have enough time to get to everything. So, again, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to this evening's study club webinar. If you are new here, welcome. If you're a returning attendee, we are very happy to have you back. This was founded in early 2024. The Endodontic Study Club is dedicated to building a strong endodontic community while providing meaningful, peer-led CE education on a monthly basis. As a reminder, we meet on the third Wednesday of each month, and we hope to welcome those joining us tonight back for future study club sessions. So for this evening's webinar, we have the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Kirk Coury and Dr. Peter Hum. I would like to quickly review tonight's webinar objectives. During tonight's webinar, we will review strategies for confidently integrating new technology into one's workflow and team culture. We will navigate procedural challenges and patient responses with clinical precision and leverage technology adoption to elevate clinical outcomes and practice growth. So some quick housekeeping. This evening's webinar does include 1.5 CE. So let's quickly review the CE process. You must be individually registered. Attendance will be recorded via Zoom and internal CE auditing will take place. I want to remind everyone to make sure their name is visible in your Zoom profile. Or if you don't know how to change your Zoom profile name, just message us in the chat your full first and last name. A survey will be sent via email after tonight's webinar, and we just ask that you fill out that survey, and a CE cert will be sent to you via email once completed. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to education@sonendo.com. So this is an interactive session. Questions are highly encouraged, and there will be a dedicated Q&A session. Please enter all of your questions in the chat box, and we'll review these questions at the end of the presentation. There will be time to come off mute, and if you want to engage directly with Dr. Kirk Coury and Peter Hum, we will have time for that. So again, thank you so much for joining, and I would like to go ahead and let Dr. Kirk Coury and Peter Hum start their presentation. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's always a pleasure to be able to spend a little time with you sharing one of my passions, and that's, utilizing the technology like GentleWave in my daily practice and sharing it with you. I had a chance to review all of your responses to what you expected out of this presentation, and so the presentation has sort of morphed based on that. Hope we can get as much of your questions answered through this time that we're sharing together. So without further ado, I want to jump through this and we'll get through as much as we possibly can. There's a lot here, and if we have to skip a few things, we will. And if you need more information on things, you're welcome to reach out to us and text us, and we can provide that to you, just because in the best interest of time. So there we go. Obviously, we are KOLs for Sonendo and all that goes with that. I can tell you I'm pretty opinionated, so I'll let you know I'm pretty much an open book, and I know Peter is too. So I'll let you know everything I know and what I think about this technology. So you've invested in GentleWave. Now what? That's the question I pose to you is what's next? You have this cool console sitting in the corner of your operatory, and I hope that you're using it. But what is your reason? What is your why behind your desire to use GentleWave? Well, obviously, one of the things I would hope is you want a cleaner canal or cleaner canal system. The other thing I would hope is you would be seeking that your patient experience is enhanced. And one of those things is patients have less postoperative pain. And that's not just an Amarillo window. or with Peter's practice, it's across the board on all of us that use GentleWave. Maybe saving time. And yes, there's a learning curve. But once you adopt the learning curve and you become proficient, you will be more efficient. How about better outcomes? Well, I know that outcomes, those are really difficult to quantify. It takes years and years, but I can tell you, we all know our own practices. We know the nuances of our practices. And I can tell you, it feels like we're getting better outcomes as a result of using a technology that cleans canals systems better. A little bit about my story. So I've been using GentleWave for about 8 years. I've been practicing a very long time. 30, by the way, you like my t-shirt? Can you guys see it? I don't know if you can. It says Smooth Obturator. And we have different t-shirts with different slogans that we use, and patients always are like, what's a smooth obturator? So it gives us something to talk about with our patients, and it just adds a little bit of fun throughout our day. So 35 years, 8 of those years, the last 8 obviously has been with GentleWave. Before GentleWave, I was about a 75, 80% single visit practice, which is predominantly single visit, but I retreatments, preoperative swellings and acute apical periodontitis, I would do in 2 visits many times. After GentleWave, I'm happy to say I'm a one visit or I'm a single visit practice, 99%. I can't really tell you the last time I've done 2 visits. I mean, it happens if I can't dry it, I can't fill it, basically. And of course, as I mentioned, we're seeing less postoperative pain. And I'm just going to tell you, if that's the only thing that GentleWave did, I would invest in it. It has been a game changer in terms of the patient experience and, cutting out all those patients who are calling saying, "Hey, my tooth still hurts for whatever reason." That's been huge. So less post-op pain is a big deal. And that translates into a better patient experience, of course. And I will, got to admit, I was kind of nearing burnout, and burnout can come about from a lot of different things. Usually it's because you're bored. It's not because you're overworked. You're just bored. You're tired of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And GentleWave provided an avenue that now I still, 8 years later, I can't even believe it's been 8 years, to be honest with you, that I still look forward to coming to the office, still look forward to doing root canals because GentleWave changed that for me. So my ask for you as we move forward in this presentation is for you to open your mind because when we look through a lens of past experiences, which we all do, that's the way we were taught. We base our techniques and the things that we believe in on what we learned in residency. But it can be hard to see what's right in front of us. But once we're able to see things through a different set of lens and what is really possible, and then we trust what's possible, then you'll wonder why you didn't really see it before. And that's how it worked with me with GentleWave. That's how, if you'll trust those of us who have, you know, put this to the test and we've really challenged the technology and we've challenged a company who believes in advancing this technology and they listen, then I think you're going to find that your experience with GentleWave will be much more pleasant and your adoption will be much quicker. So I always like to show this slide because if you have a fixed mindset, if there's an easy way to do things, there's a hard way. And it's much easier to reimagine endodontics if you don't have this so-called fixed mindset. If we believe that everything's carved in stone, it's very difficult to adopt and embrace change. Even if, and this is important, listen to this, even if that change potentially improves performance or outcomes. However, if we adopt a growth mindset, And it's a conscious effort. It doesn't just happen automatically. Then it really knows no boundaries. We can adapt. We can bring in new technologies, and we can say, okay, let me challenge this technology. Let me challenge the notion behind the technology. It allows us to grow. And sometimes it's going to be in a positive direction, and maybe sometimes it's in a negative direction. But my goal, our goal for you is no matter where you are on this spectrum, whether you're crawling right now, whether you're walking with gentle wave, we want to get you to sprinting. And that is the goal of every time we come together to talk about gentle wave. I think I think I can speak for everyone that we can agree that many times we're left wondering if we're consistently cleaning and debriding the root canal spaces that we're treating. I mean, are we truly satisfied? We know that this complex anatomy exists. Hess showed it back in 1917. And he said even then that it's a system that instruments cannot clean alone. So here we are, 2026, and we're still arguing this. We're still conflicted with how we can best clean that anatomy. And if you look at the bottom images, that's what traditional root canal, and those are my cases, by the way, that's what traditional root canal therapy looks like, right? We opened up the spaces, we got deeper penetration of the irrigants. Unfortunately, we weakened the pericervical dentin by doing so, but nonetheless, our cases are successful. But yet we still have those patients that return and they say, my tooth still hurts. And we're like, yeah, but it's a textbook case. But they're going, but my tooth still hurts. So we know this anatomy exists, but we have to ask ourselves a question. Does it matter? And if it matters, when does it matter? Is it all the time? Is it just occasionally? Not every tooth is sexy like this. Eric Branson, he's on here. Not every tooth is sexy, is it, Eric? But there's a lot of them that has a lot of crazy anatomy. And sometimes I truly believe that anatomy does matter. Here's my case. I treated it. Now we can talk about coronal leakage here and things of that nature, but this patient did well for quite some time and then returned and had some discomfort. So I decided to retreat my case. And I don't think anybody here will disagree that that looks like basically a good root canal. But I had gentle wave this time, so I retreated it, and this was what the result was. Does anatomy matter? And if so, when does it matter? Because the patient became asymptomatic after this. These are the little aha moments that gentle wave provides if you trust the technology. And this was a single visit case, by the way. Eric provided this, and this is a obviously. And is there anyone on this call that would critique this root canal and say, hey, this doesn't look good? I mean, there's a lateral canal coming out into the furcation. Everyone says this looks pretty good, right? I think we all agree. But guess what? The patient continued to have pain. This was treated by an endodontist. So the patient went to another endodontist, and this was the retreatment. Any concerns? I don't think so. I don't think any endodontist in the country will say that's a bad looking root canal. Neither one of them. But guess what? Patient continued to have pain. So Eric, being the scientist that he is, he decided to take some images. Obviously, the tooth was extracted. And this is what he saw in one of the views. There was some empty canal space. Well, what does that mean? He did some further imaging, computer renderings, and you can see this is unfilled pulp space. This is uninstrumented, unclean, and unfilled pulp space. And this is a failure of technology. This is not a failure of our intention to do good work. We all do good work. We want to do good work. We do the best with what we can with the instrumentation and the technology that we have available to us. Radiographs show us what we did, not what we didn't do. We are sort of hostage to the technology that we implement, the traditional technology, and we're hostage to those white lines. That's how we're judged, that's how we're reimbursed, and that's how we critique ourselves and others, correct? So, can we do better? So, faced with the dilemma, we should ask ourselves these questions. What if there's a technology available that allowed us to implement a less invasive protocol that will allow us to simultaneously debride and disinfect the entire canal system? And it would avoid the use of over-tapered instruments and use fewer, if any, sometimes instruments, allowing us then to preserve as closely as possible the original canal anatomy and at the same time completely remove tissue and debris from the canal spaces, including all the fins and anastomoses, the irregularities, and the apical third cleanliness. And then in doing so, we could provide less postoperative pain, all predominantly in a single visit. This is when I began my gentle wave journey, and I began to trust this technology by those who basically led the way before me. And that's what gentle wave does for us. Just as a quick reminder of how this technology works, you have a high velocity stream coming through the PI. It hits an impingement plate, and that's when all this activity occurs, all the energy with cavitation, shock waves, sound waves, and then you get the vortical flow throughout the entire root canal system simultaneously. And if you've ever seen some of Eric's videos, you see that once the rheostat is pushed, activity takes place in entire throughout the entire root canal space, apex to access, and back and forth. And then all of this is constantly refreshed. And you're talking about a 400 plus milliliters of fluid through a tooth during the gentle wave cycle. The key is it's degassed, so there's no air bubbles. That means there are no vapor locks inside the tooth, which is the problem with every positive pressure device, lasers, positive pressure irrigation, passive ultrasonic irrigation. All of that is positive pressure. So you get the constant refreshing of the fluids. It's a protocol of a defined period of time. And you're using the same solutions that we use in traditional treatment, EDTA and hypochlorite. It's just delivered in a different, more effective way. And this is just showing what tissue looks like under the energy of different types of advanced irrigation, notwithstanding traditional needle irrigation. And you can see how quickly the tissue is dissolved or digested. Gentle wave being the quickest, Fotona moving around that tissue, and it happens in about 4 minutes, and that's respectable. But if you look at everything else, not much. I mean, you might as well just use traditional needle irrigation from a debridement standpoint. Now, lasers are not known for debridement so much as they are for disinfection. That's what I like about gentle wave because it does both. This is a good friend of mine. I don't know if you guys know Joe Spires, but the gentle wave procedure is really just it's a debridement and disinfection powerhouse. If you guys are into fitness and you want to read a great book, Joe practices in Indiana and he just wrote this book. So I always like to plug it for him. That's his face. His body's pretty close to that too, by the way. But he just won a huge competition, national competition. Great guy. If you don't know Joe Spires, you ought to follow him on Instagram. He's pretty motivational. I saw this just a couple of days in Instagram and I thought this was really great. The tooth sets the rules. Our job is to adapt. Before we created sometimes injuring the tooth by over preparing it. But gentle wave allows us to truly adapt to that original canal shape. And we look at the cone beam and we say, I want to respect this anatomy. And so we can look at the end in mind and then back into it and say, the palatal canal, I may not have to do much to because it looks like it's about a 40 or a 50. But you know what? The mesial buccal and the distal buccal, I'm going to have to do a little work on. but I want to be as conservative as possible to preserve that pericervical dentin. So it allows us to really adapt to what the tooth is giving us rather than us creating a shape that potentially can harm that tooth long term. So, those were my before gentle wave cases. And now, after gentle wave, this is what it looks like. We're able to more closely resemble the original canal anatomy and that complex anatomy that exists within these root canal spaces. And here I am, what, 8 years later, 16,000 cases later, and I can tell you that this technology has changed the way we practice and it's changed the patient experience, which I love. And it's also changed the referral experience and referral awareness. And that's something that has been really a positive. So as we begin to think, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but as we begin to think about how do we become a true gentle wave practice, we knew when we brought gentle wave on that we wanted to create a solid sort of a whole platform around the gentle wave, and we would have to include our entire team in this. It couldn't just be the doctors with this great idea. So it starts with that doctor commitment. We had to lead by example, and we had to share our enthusiasm and our why behind changing up things. And we shared that with the team so that we would get team buy-in. And we knew that we had to deliver a consistent gentle wave experience with every single patient. If we didn't, then it would be this start stop, and it was really quick to fall back into our old way of doing things. And we also allowed us then to teach the patients about it. Hey, here's why your treatment's going to be different at Amarillo Endodontics. And then by doing that, that helped us reinforce our referral relationships, and it gave us something new to talk about with them. And the more we did it, the better we got and the more we progressed. And the only person that can actually implement this is you. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And that I'm going to turn this over to Peter. Peter, take it.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Dr. Coury and I for this presentation. I've been a Gentle Wave user since 2021. The G3 was purchased with the practice when I moved to Washington State. I first had exposure to this tech when I was in residency at the University of Washington in 2017 to 2019. I'm really excited to join the team as a KOL and plan to be more involved this year, starting off with this talk. I'll be piggybacking on Dr. Coury's guidance. This is more of kind of like a personal experience of the challenges I had adopting this tech and the solutions that came to fruition after much tinkering. So I hope that you all get some value from these examples. So we'll be discussing considerations like workflow, platform building, restorative, ergonomics, etc. Okay, so you've accessed the tooth. You did some coronal flaring, instrumented to a couple millimeters from the apex, and now it's time to apply the sound seal. So the first thing I do is I get a very thin layer of bonding agent right around the access, cure it, then I lay a thin layer of sound seal around the occlusal just to get on a more even plane, keeping in mind the grooves, the highest points of the cusps. I'm not going all the way down the tooth surfaces on the sides, maybe only a millimeter or two past the occlusal. I then get a fresh ring of sound seal around the occlusal again, but only to outline it, and just a little generous on the distal, but I don't cure it. I then load the platform template with the sound seal, place it onto the access, and then I cure it twice. This ensures two sides of fresh sound seal will gel into each other and provide a void-free seal. Sometimes you're going to see voids or bubbles from the view of the platform. Feel free to spin the platform a couple times and the voids will bleed out. So here's a great case where I had hard stops 3 to 4 millimeters from the apex. These are 23 millimeter roots. So I went ahead and employed gentle wave. I ran gentle wave and then obturated, and you can see why the hard stops were present on the distal root. There's a split right there, and on the mesial there was a hard bend You can't see it in this plane, but I can assure you that there was. You can appreciate the mid-mesial visualized with a fine line of sealer towards the coronal third on that mesial root. Okay, now going back to the platform, once you're done utilizing the gentle wave cycle and you're taking that sound seal off, grade your sound seal when you're done. Be your harshest critic. When I was a general dentist, I used to look at my final impressions for bubbles, voids, hints of imperfections that could hinder an optimal outcome, crown margin. Here I do the same. Look for where the sound seal doesn't meet the crown. Look for voids. Uncured sound seal is a big one. I guarantee you'll start to see the trends in your work and be able to remedy them once you detect them. This is just to show that my sound seal gaskets are usually 4 millimeters in thickness. I like to get very specific about the way I do things, so I'm trying to be helpful by giving some dimensions here. Here's a good example that shows the distal, where I didn't lay down enough sound seal on the platform builder, nor on the occlusal of the tooth. You'll be able to spot large voids like this easily and fix them. Just be vigilant for them before you start the cycle. Sometimes these voids or communications are much smaller, making them frustrating and taking up precious chair time until you remove the whole thing and you find it. A lot of times you can just, instead of rebuilding a whole new platform, you can just reline the old platform and then seat it back on. Lastly, like most things when it comes to creating your own protocol, there are no right answers, only trade-offs. Bonding sound seal can usually come off the crown pretty cleanly, but natural tooth structure or restorative material will bond pretty well and leave sound seal bits flash around the access and other areas. Sometimes it's easy, flick of a curette or an endo explorer, but sometimes you'll need to drill it off. Here we've got a great example of a vital tooth that was undergoing irreversible pulpitis after crown placement. Judging by the PA, you can tell there's hints of C-shape anatomy, and I knew gentle wave was going to be employed. Typically, my protocol for these types of teeth that have joining canals, like the 212s and things of that nature, I'm going to open and file to the junction and let gentle wave do the rest of the work. You can see it does a great job of the isthmus and the split in the apical third, even with vital tissue.
Peter, what I have to struggle with my, legacy concepts and thoughts and opinions is that gentle wave, creates patency for us.
Mhm.
And when I remember that, then I don't have to go and, go through 20 or 30 eights and tens. I let the gentle wave do the work in that apical crazy anatomy, and then I'm rewarded by the obturation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And we'll be discussing later in the slides how you really need to trust this tech to let the let you, relax and let it do the hard work for you in that apical third. Um, but it does take a lot of trust and trial and error to get there. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to share now, certainly. So this is a case where another C shape, but you can see on that mesial root that it's going to be a difficult case just by looking at the two mesials and how they disappear at the junction there. Another C shape anatomy, um, and you can appreciate how. So I instrumented the distal canal, and you can see a larger cone shape there. And I only instrumented the mesiolingual canal, which is a slightly larger taper as well. And then you can see a thinner tapered sealer extrusion right down the mesiobuccal, going all the way down. And you can see that if you can see a little fine line behind that distal canal, uh, and just a little bit of sealer extrusion actually getting to the apical radiolucency. So it was really the gentle wave that, once I finished that cycle and I obturated, I was able to see that all fill. And fortunately, the sealer was able to go straight to the source of the issue. All right, Doc, back over to you.
All right, we're going to move through a few things when it comes to platform building because that was some concerns that many have, and there's a lot to it, but yet it's very simple once you sort of get the technique down. And I'll share with you a few tips and tricks that I have with this. It really is the key to success. If the platform is good, then everything, after that goes well, not only for us, but for our patients. So the site preparation obviously is the most important thing that we can do. We want to get the carries out of the way because GentleWave will do it for you if you don't. So I think it's uh, critical that we, analyze the case. I just look at the case before I get started. And again, I just look at the end in mind and I say, okay, here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm going to have to do to get the best outcome. And then off we go. It works out really well. But I don't like surprises and I don't like having to redo a platform. Obviously, when you have a deep box and you have caries, you're going to have some hyperplastic tissue. It's going to be, it's going to be pretty inflamed. So we want to be able to manage that tissue. And the way we do it is with good hemostasis. And you remove that hyperplastic tissue too. We'll talk about that. And then you want to have a dry environment and that allows a sound seal, which is the conforming resin that we use for the platform so that the PI can sit on. And the reason I'm saying that is because there are some people on the call that haven't used GentleWave yet. So if you're advanced in your application of the technology, then you'll know what I'm talking about. This stuff's great. I didn't believe it would work like it works. But if you have dry environment and you incrementally cure this sound seal, then you're going to have a great bond and a great seal. So we first just apply alcohol to the tooth surface and then desiccate it with air syringe. And then we apply the sound seal. And like I said, it's important that you incrementally cure this. Peter had mentioned 4 millimeters. Well, I did a little study, and about 4 millimeters is the depth of cure you'll get. Anything thicker than that, you potentially are going to leave some uncured material, and it's going to be at the base, and that's where it's going to leak. My assistant hands me the matrix, and I apply the sound seal to it, and then I place it on the tooth. This is just a show, and I literally took this today. This shows you my access. It's fairly conservative. It's about the size of that diamond football, and this is what it looks like once I place the Sound Seal platform. I like to be fairly efficient, so I want 3 different tips to my Sound Seal because I'm going to use those 3 different tips for different things. I have the black micro tip that if I've got any voids after I've placed the platform, then I can take that and seal those voids. I don't have to replace the entire sound seal. Of course, the white Mac tip's what I use for gross application. If I have any interproximal boxes, undercuts, I use the metal Dento infuser tip. These are all from Ultradent. That comes with the little nylon brush at the end. I just pop that brush or pull it out, and that's what I use. And I use that for every proximal box. And this is just a video. I hope it's not skipping. I was having a little trouble with it earlier. So I'm doing some hemostasis with a little Moncell's solution, ferric sulfate. And you can see I've removed that hyperplastic tissue sub-level to the cavus surface margin. You just take your round burr, a diamond, what have you. Now I'm going to desiccate it, air dry it. I want everything completely dry, including that sulcus area or coal area. And now I'm going to place bonding. I always bond a box. I don't want that to leak. And if it's going to leak, that's where it's going to leak. And I'm going to put a little bit around the tooth. And you can see my MB2. And now I'm using that metal dento infuser tip and I'm placing it into the sulcus first before I come onto the tooth. And you'll notice as I come outside, see how I tee that? I go around the premolar and then back around the molar. Why do I do that? That creates a barrier on both sides should there be leakage. And we're curing both the lingual and the buccal. And then I just begin to build upon that. And I want to make sure that all the undercuts are captured and I bring it up flush with the ridge of the premolar. And then after I'm there, then I can go ahead and create the rest of the platform fairly quickly with my gross large macro tip. And then just another example of what that looks like in another case, because this is where people have the most difficulty is getting this sound seal application right. So there's my alcohol. Going to desiccate it. I've already removed the tissue, the hyperplastic tissue in the sulcus, in the coal area. Air dry it with my Stropco. I like to
Hey,
use it. Go
sorry,
ahead.
when you that that tissue, how do you like to remove it?
I just use a small diamond round and I just take it down below the cava surface.
Okay, thank you.
Just a functional gingivectomy.
Yep.
And then here comes my Dento infuser tip. Notice I'm going into the sulcus first, coming out, coming this direction to the lingual, I'm teeing it, doing a little T, and then back the other way. I'll do the T out there. And then I'm going to grab that undercut right there on the buccal, and then the undercut on the lingual, palatal. And one of the things you can do with this sound seal is you use your Explorer and you can draw that sound seal down to your caval surface. That way you ensure even a better seal so it's not going to leak underneath. And then you cure that. This is really critical because this will minimize your leakage and therefore your uh, you won't have to replace a buildup if it does leak. And that's just such a time killer when it happens. But you learn. That's how you learn, right? You learn from your mistakes, not from your successes. And then I just continue to add till I get up to the marginal ridge. And then the rest of it, now I have a normal tooth. You can see me drawing the sound seal around those curves a little bit. Cure that. And that don't forget to pre-fit your matrix. So I'm going to move on. Here's a case, large distal carious lesion. Patient wanted to save the tooth. So we went through it, removed all the caries, removed this hyperplastic tissue, good hemostasis. And I'm going to now apply the sound seal just like you saw. There's the platform in place. And one of the cool things is I'll go ahead and obturate with some of that sound seal. Why? Because I do all the buildups for my referring doctors. And this serves as a matrix for the buildups. Dr. Mark Limasani decided, it created this for us to be able to do this, and it makes perfect sense. It's right there, and we use less buildup material, then we can just take off the sound seal or prep it away, and there it is. Premolars, this is my technique I like to use for premolars because that platform is pretty large, or the matrix is pretty large for premolars and anteriors. So I bond everything. It's just me. It takes me an extra 2 seconds. So I just like to bond everything. That way I just eliminate any guesswork or potential for this. And then I like to go into the groove. But notice I'm just going on the occlusal part. I'm not really going and capturing the CEJ area. And I'm not real worried how I make that application. Then I'll use my Explorer to remove it. Sometimes I'll bond or I'll cure this and sometimes I won't. There's a platform, but notice what I'm going to do differently. I'm not going to go all the way out to the outer flange. I don't need to. I'm just going to go to that inner flange and then I'll seat it onto the axis. And remember, you don't really need the outer flange. You don't even need it for molars for that matter, because the PI has the little nib extending from it. So it's going to engage your platform and it's not going to move. So now I really don't even worry about that outer flange. And I would think that it could probably even be eliminated on the matrix. So as you can see, there's some more examples that we can use, but the seal is the deal. Once you get that seal down, it takes an extra minute, minute and a half on complex buildups, maybe max of 4 minutes, and off you go. Once that is established, then the rest of the procedure goes smoothly. Now, I'd like to shift gears a little bit. And when I'm lecturing, I always say this is probably the most important part of talking about this technology because we talked about how to establish that culture and get the buy-in from your team. I've talked to so many endodontists that says, my team hates it. We're running behind. They want us to get going, or vice versa. I've talked to endodontist team who says, "Oh, we want to use it. We love it, but my endodontist won't use it." So you have to get this synergy established. And I'd like to think that you do it long before the console even arrives. It's just a culture that you're going to establish and say, okay, this is how our patients are going to be treated from here on. And there are some practices who one partner doesn't use GentleWave, the other partner uses GentleWave. That's unacceptable for us because our messaging can't be different. We want it to say, this is what we believe in, this is our philosophy, and going forward, this is how we're going to treat your patients. So we'll talk a little bit about the referral connection. We'll talk about the technology through marketing, and we've already explained how we think that the patient experience is enhanced. So we have some doctor requirements. We have to commit to the protocol, and then we have to master it. We have to be consistent in our communication, and we want to deliver that same communication to our patients. And that starts at the front desk, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. And then our team, they have to buy in. And they're not really selling it. They're just there to clarify and reinforce our belief in this technology. And that consistency builds trust. So we have a unified language, and they're always supporting what we're talking about. And they're always guiding and educating the patient. So it begins in the front office. We want the tone, the clarity, the calm communication to reduce fear and improve the case acceptance because our patients are shopping around. Used to referring doctors, there was this big connection and the patients would do whatever the referring doctor said. Well, that's not so much the case anymore because patients are getting onto Google. They're reviewing and saying, well, he referred me here or she referred me here, but I think I'm going to go over here because look at the Google reviews. So we have to be at the top of our game, and that starts with the front of our front desk. They set the expectations before the patient even arrives. And that way they understand what's going on. And we always want to speak to the patient directly, even if the referring doctor makes the appointment. We'll introduce the technology, why we're going to be different, what's going to set our practice apart from other practices. We'll talk about them. We'll try to make sure that we meet their expectations and set their expectations in advance of the care. And then we want them to visit our website. We want them to visit the GentleWave website so they have a working idea of what they're going to experience when they arrive. And we'll explain to them any pre and post care communication. Of course, financial conversations will take place here, and then we'll schedule. And of course, the back office, that's where, all the magic happens. That's the trenches where every room is going to be set up for gentle wave. Every patient's getting CBCT, and that's another discussion that I'm happy to have. But we're endodontists. We need to know everything there is to know about the tooth or teeth that we're treating and surrounding structures. I'm pretty adamant about that. Endodontists, referring doctors now are having CBCT, but not every CBCT is the same. Endodontists use advanced endodontic imaging. That term is thanks to Bruno Azevedo. And the referring doctor detects a problem. We determine what the source of the problem is. And that's the truth. Our technology is so advanced and we know what to look for in that respect. So, and it's also a timestamp. Maybe that CBCT was taken 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now we're getting something totally different. Things change quickly when it comes to infection, inflammation, and bone. So every patient gets CBCT. We're going to talk about communicating how comfortable this technology is and how comfortable a root canal procedure is going to be in our office. We'll talk about what the doctor's already talked to the patient about. All of my team, we want them to be specialist assistants. So we teach them how to test every tooth and how to diagnose. It empowers them, it elevates them above the average assistant, and they're very good at it. And it takes the load off of me. And then they meet the expectations of the patients head on, and they'll talk about different ways of what we're going to be doing. We use visual aids, and this is all enhanced by a procedural workflow that optimizes efficiency. We talk about it routinely. We want to be able to move through the technology, move through the root canal procedure as efficient as we possibly can, as long as the patient remains comfortable. One of the things we hear all the time when I'm talking to docs is that gentle wave is going to slow me down. I'm too busy for that. And again, there is a learning curve, no doubt about it. But the faster I can get you from crawling or walking to running and sprinting, that means you're going to trust me and you're going to do exactly what we tell you to do in terms of how to use this technology. This is not a two-visit technology unless you can't dry it. But the more productive you will become when you begin to trust those who have sort of gone before you and trusting what the technology's been built upon. And that means you have to use it. You can't say, well, it's a necrotic case, I'm going to use it here, or oh, this looks like a really big lesion, I'm going to use it here, or I'm going to do two-visit gentle wave and I'm going to put calcium hydroxide until I see radiographic evidence of healing. Those are sort of dichotomies to what this technology was designed for.
So, when at first adopting Gentle Wave for me, I was that doc that didn't change much in my workflow. I didn't buy in completely. Even though I went to lectures and I saw how Dr. Coury, Dr. Facer, and other providers utilize Gentle Wave, there was always that small bit of doubt that if I adopted the same routine and used it as an instrument that substituted my hands, my cases would not be successful. So I utilized it as an adjunct, which really increased the time of my treatment and consequently stress. So rather than finishing my cases early, like I'd usually do, I'd be finishing them right on the dot or just a little over my appointment blocks. So more specifically, the order in which I treat, like the maxillary molar, for example, I'm usually opening palatal, DB, MB, then I'm troughing for the MB2, negotiating, instrumenting fully, then I would add the gentle wave to this protocol. And then, so not only did I not change my routine, I added all this time, 12 to 15 minutes of the gentle wave cycle on top of this. But because I enjoyed the outcome of my obturations, I was seeing those laterals, I was seeing more 2-on-2s. So my efficacy had increased, but my efficiency did not. And it wasn't really until I visited Dr. Jepson's office in Anchorage. I just shadowed him for a day in his office just to see his workflow, which was very similar to our Son Endo KOLs gals and the providers we've seen before. I finally bought in and I said, okay, it's time to just let the tech do its thing. So for the new users or those who are interested in purchasing one, you really need to trust your tech. You have to buy in mentally on why you want to use this for your patients. There's really no need to waste that extra time doing what you're doing right now. You are buying this, you are investing in this disruptive technology for a reason. So, like now I just open up to a 2025, depending on the canal, 2 to 3 millimeters from the apex. For the MB2, sometimes I use a 1704, sometimes I don't use a file at all. And then I let the gentle wave cycle take over. So here are some cases uh, that are great examples of just trusting the technology to help you do the work for you and becoming being a team and putting together the best treatment that you can for your patients. So here's a case. You can appreciate the curvature of this necrotic number 3 MB while the other two roots. They're pretty straightforward. Notice also where the MB2 and the MB1 meet at about mid-root, 4 millimeters coronal to the apex. You can see where it splits off, but you don't visualize much of an MB2. The old me would have said, hey, let's spend 10 minutes troughing, removing more dentin, negotiating the canal with a 6, working it up to a 10, get my rotary in there, etc. Then after that, let's run the gentle wave. Instead, judging by this specific situation, I just decided to run gentle wave after getting a 2504 rotary 2 millimeters from the apex on the MB route on the MB canal. And so you can see here there's quite a lot of MB1, MB2 anatomy that was picked up by the sealer, and you can see how effective the gentle wave was at opening the MB2 and the laterals. The patient was a good sport. Let me take a straight shot of just the buckles because I knew the angle that I needed to really get that MB2 to shine. You can see the full extent of that canal where it fills in relation to the MB1. You can see that it's not just joining the MB1, but in fact parallels it at multiple different points. They join and split. So once you utilize gentle wave more, you'll start to see way more Vertucci type 5, 6, 7s than the 2s and 3s that you're used to seeing with conventional care.
Those
So
are great. What sealer is that? Are you using BC?
in certain cases, I'm using BC High Flow. I have been experimenting with a couple other brands of BC Sealer. I also use AH Plus at times as well. So it depends case by
This looks
case.
like BC, I would say. I mean,
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
is that
This was
typical.
BC High Flow. Yeah.
Getting back to when you showed that slide, the G3 and the G4, for me, like you said, from a clinician standpoint, what I like about the G4 obviously is it's I can use 5% hypochlorite, and there are some things coming down the pipeline where we can, be a little bit more customizable with the G4. But my assistants really love it. That they're the ones that deal with that technology, like everything else. If I come up on the weekend, I don't know how to, I can turn on the lights to my office, but I don't know where anything else is. But they love it because it's multiple use. It'll get me about 6 cases before you have to refill the solutions. It's interactive, you know where you are on the clock, et cetera. And it's just a much, for them, it's much better. It's much less work and labor intensive than the G3 is. That's what I love about our G3. I have two G4s and then I have one G3, and I use 5% on every case. I don't ever even go back to the 3%. And I think that eventually we're going to be able to adjust whether we want to use EDTA first, maybe, if it's real calcified chamber, et cetera. I think that's going to be coming down the pipeline, later. But just want to plug the G4 on that because I think it's really a great console and lots less maintenance.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me, Doc. Also, another thing that my assistants like about the G4, or we just like it just in terms of logistics, the G3 is always locked into a specific operatory, while the G4 is mobile. So you can unplug it. It has its own temporary power supply. move it around to different ops, whereas the G3, once you unplug it, it turns off. You keep G3 assigned to one op, whereas the G4, it travels to different ops. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Mhm.
So here's a very long 26 millimeter root system on a necrotic 18. This is another C shape. It's a type 5. Not only does it have two mesial canals, but there's a very long chamber, and the split starts near the bottom of the coronal third. So if you wanted to excavate for it, whether it's with an ultrasonic tip like size 4 or 2 round burr, on a C-shaped root system, you know the paracervical dent is going to be dangerously thin if you're going down that deep with that method. Not only that, it gets so thin near the apex that even a 1704 might strip perf the apical third. So what do we do? We're going to rely on gentle wave to get us there. You can appreciate how it opened up the space, the whole length of the canal. You can see where my files ended to preserve that dentin in the apical third. You can see where the obturation material obviously thins out and the sealer presents itself fully to prevent any kind of strip perf. No removal of unnecessary paracervical dentin. The apical third is intact, but I trust that everything is well cleaned and then the patient is temporized for a new crown. All right, we're going to move on to ergonomics here. So when I first started using GentleWave, one challenge for me was that in terms of ergonomics, I fought with the hose. I fought with the handpiece. Sometimes my wrists would get tired because I had a death grip on it, that by the end of the day, my wrist is getting sore. I tried the pencil grip, the handlebar grip, the reverse handlebar grip. Nothing was for me. I was like a newbie riding a motorcycle. I mean, that grip was tight. So I know some providers that utilize a flexible clamp arm, and that works for them. But I wanted to share a solution that I have, and I started draping the hose over my scope. So the key to it is consistent landmarks. When it comes to an effortless gentle wave cycle, keeping ergonomics in mind, let the machine, the hose, and the handpiece placement work for you. I've been really getting into long distance shooting, and when you're shooting 1,000+ yards, even the smallest amount of inconsistency can totally get you off your target. So we practice a consistent cheek weld, placement of the trigger, finger, fine-tuned placement. It doesn't change to achieve the result you want. And the same concept applies here. The machine is always going to be about 90 degrees to the patient's head. It's going to be about arm's reach of the handle from me or my assistant. I'm going to drape the hose over the scope arm. Now, my scope is a Zeiss Xtero 300, but your landmarks may vary. My hose placement is always going to touch the last 2 inches of the left handle, and there's a reason for that. Here you can see I'm using the hose stiffness as an advantage, and I can literally manage the handpiece with just one finger. And this technique works for both maxillary and mandibular teeth. This is all I'm doing for the whole cycle of gentle wave. I'm just using one finger and just pressing it down on the tooth. You just need to move the scope around and the machine around until you find the right hose length that will give you the slack or stiffness that you need so that the handpiece sits right on the sound seal. But when everything is placed right and consistent, this is how easy it can be to employ gentle wave. It doesn't take that much effort at all.
Yeah, and so kind of the same thing. I implement a holder. It's actually a cell phone holder that you can get off of Amazon, and I'll show you that right now. And you can see this is Zania. She's been with me 18 years, and she's definitely my right hand person. And she probably knows more about gentle wave than I do, to be quite honest with you. And this is the little extended arm. It's very, stiff, and you can move it and bend it, and basically the same exact thing that Peter just described, except rather than using my scope, I'm using that clamp, and you can see how the hose is rested across that. And it doesn't move, it's very stiff. And this is where you can get it, so you can take a picture of that. And as I said, we empower our teams. Our team is well trained on the gentle wave procedure, and they have just as much experience as I do. And you can see I'm able to go do other things. I can start another case. I can consult another case because I trust them to do the technology. And we started off by just me doing the hypo and then letting them go. But honestly, with clean flow, there's been, as far as to my knowledge, zero issues. And in my practice, even back when using the original PI, we've had zero hypochlorite issues in 16,000 cases. So, it all is a matter of making sure that the protocol is adhered to. It is the safest type of procedure out there, safer than hypodermic, safer than positive pressure needle irrigation, that's for sure. Here's really the reality. Zania is the boss. We did that as that we staged that one. I'm the one that ends up doing all the work. But we do work smarter. All the other technologies, especially like lasers, it requires four-handed dentistry. Gentle wave is single-handed dentistry for that 8 minutes. And honestly, for us, and for anyone who actually trusts that technology, it's taken the guesswork, it takes the fear and the concerns out of the equation, and it replaces it. Once you adopt it and you start getting that haptic feedback, you get confidence, you see the predictability in the technology because of the protocol. There is a protocol that you adhere to, and if you don't adhere to the protocol, things are going to go awry and outcomes are going to be successful when we do. And remember, and I can't stress it enough because this is what separates GentleWave from all the other technologies, is it is the only one available today that can predictably and efficiently clean, debride, disinfect all the canals simultaneously, including the apical third.
Here are some examples where the apical third or the efficacy of gentle wave really shines for me. Please don't pay attention to the voids on the MB with my down pack, but look at where my rotary is ending. My hand files, they couldn't go past where the two mesials were joining. It's just too acute of an angle that they meet. We've all done this before where the angle's too steep. Just pushing the rotary a little past that joining area gives us that little click of the rotary handpiece, and you just know that when you remove the file, it's separated. It's going to be 2 to 6 millimeters short. Fantastic. But with the gentle wave, you can rest assured that the apical third will get clean. So in this case, I just opened it up to a 2504 on the mesials until where they joined, and then you can see the sealer is going well past that point to the apex. So we've got number 18 and 19 here. I treated them both. You can appreciate number 19, mesial root, especially on this PA. The MB canal, just a bear to negotiate. You can see where the gutta percha cone had ended. My file could not only go so far. These are vital teeth, by the way. That gets us much further to the apex. You can also see number 18, the amount of isthmus filled, as well as the apical third on the mesial root there. This was all gentle wave. If I placed my files down the mesial portion of the C on the distal, a strip would have likely occurred. Here's another great example of when I could not get down the canal space. The floor was flat, and trying to get my file to anything was pretty pointless. I had multiple sticks, but nothing that would allow me to negotiate. So I ran the gentle wave and obturated accordingly. Sometimes the handpiece is so powerful that it removes the calcification up top of the canal. And in this case, that's what it did. It just gave me enough for me to slink a 6K, few millimeters down, get some sealer in there, and then when I condensed, I was able to let it flow down.
That's cool.
Sometimes even inadequate treatment or an inadequate looking obturation can lead to a great outcome with the help of gentle wave. So here we have a patient with a necrotic tooth that's symptomatic, calcified to all hell. You can barely make out anything on the chamber, the mesial root up to the mid root. You can see on the PA there were little to no remnants at all of any canal space. So I let her and the provider know after the consult, hey, we may only get so far on that route, but the patient wanted to move forward. And sure enough, I had hard stops. So I ran gentle wave. So you can appreciate the healing on this at 6 months. So we're not at a year yet, but there is presence of a PDL on the entire mesial root. On the distal root, the mesial aspect has PDL, uniform PDL, as well as a furcal bone that's appeared. The distal radiolucency is much smaller. Just to show you the scan slices here. Here we're going from 7 to 8 millimeters down to 1.4 on the distal. And the mesial, where there's only half the root obturated, is almost completely healed.
It's awesome.
So great healing even at 6 months. Here's another great case with some awesome healing. I treated a necrotic pulp with chronic apical abscess. The provider and the patient were worried about a crack. So I offered to open med to ease their concerns about the questionable prognosis, and we watch it for healing of the sinus tract before obturating. The refer is, I would say, a little more conservative with endo approaches, but that's okay. I was willing to work with that. So we open medicated, but made sure to use gentle wave. You'll see how it not just assisted with healing, but also the distal root. That area of the thin obturation, you can see there was completely inaccessible to me. I would have had to trough with ultrasonic forward tip and completely bore it out to get to that. But the sinus tract healed. There was an absence of symptoms. It took about 3 months at the recall, got him back in the chair, and at obturation, which was just a few days ago, you can appreciate the presence of a PDL down the roots, and the furcal bone is back.
Wow, that's
Just
amazing.
to show you on the scan what it looked like before, very bleak. I think there's a lot of people who would have thought to pull this tooth, and maybe understandably so, but we're not dental students anymore. The mantra "Purple radiolucency means a fractured tooth" does not hold true in all cases. If anything,
Yeah.
always open and med a case like I did for this case, and watch for improvement of symptoms, and see great results that follow. All
Okay,
right.
those are awesome cases. My goodness. I love how conservative they are. I'd like to move along, but I do want to just talk about the gentle wave protocol and how it creates efficiency. We were hoping to get more efficient when we brought gentle wave on, but reality was we just wanted it to clean canals better. And some of the things that it actually did do were sort of surprises to us. But when we talk about efficiency, one of the things that GentleWave was designed to do was improve our ability to provide care in a single visit. There's a lot of good things about single visit endodontics. And as I said, I was 75, 80% single visit, but I was able to go from 75, 80% to 99% single visit by implementing and trusting GentleWave. That's a pretty good return on my investment. I mean, I wish my stocks did that. I'd be really happy. But single visit makes sense. And this is evidence based, by the way. This isn't, Kirk saying this is the way I do it. This is true. This is in the literature. And we know that there is no difference between single visit and multi visit in terms of success across the board, all things being equal. So anytime we can get predictable root canal disinfection, then we can obturate. Well, the canal is never going to be cleaner than after gentle wave. I can assure you. Gentle wave is indeed the answer to that, but you have to trust the technology. We know that it's going to clean everything at one time, so that's an efficiency right there. As you begin to trust it, it is predictable because of the protocol is 8 minutes. Endodontists can't even agree on what size to take the apex. We can't agree on much of anything. But one thing you can't sort of disagree on is the protocol. And it was established for 8 years of research before they even brought GentleWave to market. And that's why we have to adhere to the protocol. We can't MacGyver this thing. You can't go, well, let me do it this way or let me do it this way. You do it exactly as protocol. And if you don't want to do that, I'm kind of blunt with it, is probably GentleWave's not your answer. You probably should use any of the other advanced irrigation devices that do not have set protocols. And the beauty of this is the apical third. That's where the difficulty lies in the teeth that we treat is that apical third. We win or lose games there. And gentle wave helps us to clean that area predictably. And the beauty is for me is it's single visit. It doesn't matter what the preoperative symptoms or diagnosis is. Patients swollen, I can tell you after GentleWave, they're going to be less swollen. They're already going to be well into their healing phase before I even take off the rubber dam. I've seen it time and time and time again. So my mantra is if I can't dry it, I won't fill it. That's it. Otherwise, the case is getting completed in one visit. Obviously, I told you, we're going to use fewer instruments. And as you begin to trust the technology, you don't need the bouquet of instruments that we once used. You can use two, three, maybe four instruments, and that's it. That's all you need. If the cone beam looks like the palatal is at a 40, why even instrument it? Maybe you got to debulk the pulp tissue if it's vital. Other than that, you're just going to gauge the apex when you're finished with gentle wave with a clean, sterile instrument, and that's where you're going to fill. It doesn't need to get any cleaner than that. You don't need to open it up any larger than that. We talked about less postoperative discomfort. And to put that into some sort of a tangible number, Adam Davis and Jonathan Yules in Tennessee, they actually looked at post-op pain in the 6 months prior to gentle wave to post-op pain 6 months after gentle wave. And there was almost a 70, maybe a little over 70% decrease in post-operative discomfort after implementing GentleWave. And Jonathan says this means fewer patients calling back, fewer patients being seen for a check appointment. I call these patients energy suckers because every time I get them, and especially if they have a root canal that's maybe a crappy root canal on number 18 and my textbook root canal number 19, and I'm beating the heck out of number 18, hoping that's the one, but it's not. It's number 19. That doesn't happen nearly as frequently now with GentleWave. And then the other thing is we didn't anticipate is it opened up our schedule. This is just a lot going on in this. There's two doctors. The center column was our checks, and we had five operatories at the time. And this is what a pre-gentle wave schedule looked like. In each one of these gray areas, those are two visits in the schedule, and there's six of them. And then the orange is the check appointments in this particular day. So if we gave each of those 45-minute file and complete second visit, so we got to bring the patient back and we're all endodontists, we tell the patient, oh, it'll be 30 minutes, we flush the medicine out and we'll be done. No, we start all over. You know it, I know it. We start all over because we forget, we don't trust ourselves, so we start with the beginning instruments and we go through the whole protocol. And 45 minutes is probably fairly conservative. It probably takes us a full hour. So now we've doubled the time and halved our profitability when we do this. And I'm not saying that that wasn't the protocol prior to a technology like GentleWave, but we don't have to do that anymore. So we had 4.5 hours of two visit here. And let's say each check was 15 minutes, and that's fairly conservative too. So there was 30 minutes. Here's that same schedule, but it's a post gentle wave schedule. Now it's not 9% single visit. Instead of 5 to 6 cases a day starts, we organically can do more. We're not really working harder. We just have openings in that schedule that allow us to. So every one of those two visits turns into an opportunity. And that opportunity in this case was 4.5 hours. What does that 4.5 hours equate to? Well, you can add a new patient, you can do some consults, you got a couple of emergencies you want to squeeze in, whatever it is. Maybe you want to take some personal time, go read the newspaper, go run some errands, whatever it is, it now frees up your time. It did for us. It does for everybody who actually trusts GentleWave and uses this technology. And if you don't think you have more time, then there's something called Parkinson's law, and that says that work expands to fill the time available. What that means is if you give yourself 3 hours to do a molar root canal, how long does it take you to do the molar root canal? Pretty close to 3 hours. If you give yourself 2 hours, it takes you about 2 hours. If you challenge yourself and say, you know what, I can do this molar root canal in an hour, you're going to get pretty close to that hour because you're not going to be wasting time. And now my schedule is very clean. I don't have a bunch of stuff going on because we don't have second appointments. We don't have, checks here or checks there. We have follow-ups. We have a robust recall system because that's how we can see more cases because we use cone beam. And why? Because cone beam can diagnose 30 to 40 to 50% more lesions than we can see on 2D x-ray. So what if the tooth adjacent might be a problem? We're able to at least let them know that they may have a problem and they've been a patient of ours before and we're happy to take care of that case. We'll call the referring doctor and let them know. So there's advantages to having that active recall system. In just 6 months with GentleWave, we saw a 14% improvement in our revenue. And this is just showing how the technique works. My goal is to get from access to platform as quickly as I possibly can. I like to use path files. I use TrueShape. I use Avalon Biomed. GentleWave Sunendo just came out with some beautiful files, Flow Logic that I really love. There's ways to conservatively spare dentin, and that's the type of system that I want in my practice now. Get to the platform, run gentle wave, that's 8 minutes, and then we dry the canals and obturate. So if you kind of give this a time frame, it takes, depending on complexity and calcifications, 8 to 12 minutes, and then the platform is of 1.5 to 4 minutes, 8.25 or so for the gentle wave. That doesn't vary much. And then 10 to 15 minutes obturation. So my time is about 35 to 40 minutes actual chair time on that patient. That's not something that I'm not a speed demon. I'm not advocating that you should do a 30 minute molar. I think you should take as much time as you need. That doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying that Gentle Wave creates the protocol that allows me to, I can get the workflow for getting to Gentle Wave, and I pretty well can establish my workflow for obturation, and that's predictable throughout most of my cases. I can go into marketing, but I'm going to kind of skip through this just a little bit. I want to just say it's important for us. I think all of us get a little, we get set in our ways. And one of the things that referring dentists value about us, we're specialists, right? We're supposed to be good. So we can't, it's hard to set yourself apart and go, oh, I'm a great endodontist because I'm always at the apex and look at my white lines, they're beautiful. They expect that from us. They want predictable clinical outcomes. They want an excellent patient experience for their patient. And the patient is going to go back, and that's the first thing they're going to ask. How was it with Dr. Coury? They want good scheduling. They don't want any negative feedback. And they love to be communicated with. Strong communication. The more you communicate, the better it is. And we always think, is it our ability? As I just said, we're expected to perform. We're specialists. That's what we went to school to do. Here's what really matters is your availability, your ability to see their patients when they need their patients seen. And how do we grow that? Well, we want to pay attention to them. We want to let them know that we're available. We want them to know that we're the authority in endodontics in our community. And I teach them. I want to teach them everything that I know because the more I teach them, the more I elevate endodontics in my community, the more they realize that it really isn't that easy. But I want them to choose what they do, but I want them to know what the benchmark is. I want them to know where that level of excellence is. And the only person that can establish that is me. And I have to share that level of excellence with my referring doctors, and they appreciate that. So why GentleWave? Well, it gives us something to talk about. First of all, it's an educational opportunity that we can go and talk to and share with our referring doctors why we believe this technology is so advanced and that it's going to provide us to do more single visit because patients really love single visit root canal treatment. I've never met a patient yet that wants to come back for 2 or 3 visits. I mean, put yourself in that patient's shoes. I mean, I'm the worst dental patient there is. So the thought of me having to go back more than once, now granted, if that's what I have to do because of the pathology or what have you, then that's one thing. But if we're just doing it because of our legacy thoughts and concepts, say, well, if it's a retreatment, if it's swollen, we got to do that. Gentle Wave, it eliminates that. It's less invasive. We know it's single visit. We know it's less postoperative pain. So why wouldn't we choose a technology that allows us to be more efficient with our patients and deliver excellent patient care? When we invest in a technology, there's a return on our investment, right? I mean, we purchase it and we want to know, for instance, cone beam. We can charge for cone beam, so there is a tangible benefit to incorporating cone beam. There's also sort of this cost reward risk thing. We want it to be a reward, but sometimes it's a negative. And it can vary based on how the individual practices utilize it. On the other side of the line is the value on investment, the VOI. This is intangible. Sometimes you can't really put a number to it, but An investment that has value can contribute heavily to our performance, but it can't really be measured. So it could be just what makes you feel better about yourself, how you perform. You love doing this because you feel like you're doing a better job. And I'm happy to say that within a few months, we were able to realize this value on investment coupled with the return on investment because we had the chair availability all of a sudden, we had efficiency, we had the positive patient experience. But what we didn't calculate was the file savings. We had literally an 81.5% savings in file costs because we weren't using that bouquet of files. And that was humongous. That was $100,000+ to our bottom line. So that made this technology in our hands priceless. So you think about all the things we're using. We have microscopes, rotary, microsurgical endodontic instruments, digital radiography, CBCT, and now GentleWave. And that is a value on investment. But more importantly, like Michael Ribera says, it's a value on our life. I'm a lot less stressed than I used to be doing this technology, doing root canal procedures using this technology. So in closing, it's a growth mindset. You have to trust the technology and you have to believe in it. And the only way you can do that is you got to use it. You have to use it and it has to be part of your philosophy. And everyone in the office has to speak that same language. That means everyone in the office, every patient in the office gets GentleWave unless you decide in the field when you're there, no, I'm not going to use GentleWave for whatever reason. And I told you the seal's the deal and it all starts with you. So this is how we practice. GentleWave really has put the fun back into endodontics. So thank everyone. Sorry we ran a little bit late. I hope everyone's still here. I know we have some questions to field as well. Please take a picture of this. Both of us are available anytime. Cell, email, open door policy from both of us. Peter, you have anything to say?
Just thank you for attending. And yeah, please feel free to reach out on Instagram or by email, and be happy to help. I feel like in my growth and my experience taking on this new tech, it was a steep learning curve for me, and I tinkered a lot to get to where I am now. And fortunately, Kirk was Dr. Coury is a great mentor, but he was a great help in getting me up to speed. And I appreciate his patience with me and getting me there. I'd be glad to do it for any one of you.
Thank you so much. I do want to get to these questions, so I'm thinking we could do kind of just like a rapid fire, because I know we're tight on time here. So I believe this is for you, Peter. You're showing your platform technique. So when you were talking about those voids, is that what creates the sound that you hear when you're not running generally properly?
Right.
Someone asked a question about that.
Anytime you're not hearing the gentle wave properly, it's not just necessarily the sound seal. There is a leak of some sort that is not creating the seal that in order to get it's a negative pressure system. So whatever it's placing in is trying to get back out through the feedback cycle. And it can't do that unless it's a closed system. So if you have an open margin on a crown, if you have decay that's open under the crown, if you have voids in the sound seal, these are all things, or if you don't have a crown and you have decay, these are all possible things that could be an issue with your closed system. So it could be a multitude of things, and that's what you kind of need to deduce throughout your time with tinkering and also problem solving is where that source is coming from.
Thank you. This is for you, Kirk. When you were showing your platform building, what bonding material do you use?
I knew someone was going to ask that. Again, it's kind of like coming to the office going, "What do I use?" It's a prime and bond that I use just for composites. I think it's a DenMat material, but I can get that for you. I just have to ask my right-hand person, Zania.
Okay. And then when you were building up one of your cases, why not build up the box with a glass ionomer before running GentleWave?
You can do that. Absolutely. I do that sometimes. I started off doing that, to be honest with you, because again, we do the build-ups anyway. And I do it at the end. Just probably no good answer other than wanting to get to the platform and just being a little bit lazy. So, but absolutely you can do that. And glass ionomer works beautifully.
And one other question, do you etch prior to bond for application of the sound seal?
No.
Okay. This is for either of you guys. For a necrotic tooth with a large periapical lesion, would you still consider completing treatment in a single visit using gentle wave? If opting for two visit, would with calcium hydroxide, would you recommend using gentle wave during the first visit or the second visit?
I'll take that real quick and then Peter, you can chime in. It's a single visit for me. If I can dry it, I fill it. And again, I've done so many of those cases through the years that I can show you. I would have loved to have had more time to show you some really great healing of some really large lesions. And I've got, probably 30 or 40 of those that I'm able to get back and single visit. If I can dry it, I fill it. And then I monitor, the healing just like I would any other time. But for me, it's not a two visit.
Do you have a different
Yeah,
perspective, Dr. Hum, or?
I would agree. First of all, define a large periapical radiolucency. Are we talking,
Well,
y- if periodontists are quoting turnout papers, 5 millimeters would be considered a large apical radiolucency. But
good point.
as you can see with my slide here, I gave a case that started off with 7 or 8 millimeters, and I didn't bat an eye. And you know, like I showed before, some of my not so pretty obturations can still produce a very beautiful outcome with the help of gentle wave technology. So I'm not worried about it. I'm not concerned about it. 8, 10 millimeters, 12 millimeters, I've gone in a single visit. So
Thank you. And either of you guys can take this one. If you have a case with complex apical anatomy that has previously been obturated with BC sealer and the tooth requires retreatment, is there a protocol for incorporating BC sealer solvent into the gentle wave system?
No protocol for putting it into the system. I'm assuming you're talking about as one of the fluids or something like that. Is that kind of what you're asking? If so, no. But if you wanted to incorporate it into the canal space through a needle irrigation or what have you, then I wouldn't see a problem with that.
Okay, and I think this is for Dr. Hom, because these questions were coming up when he started showing his cases. So, moving on to like obturation and how much sealer are you placing in the main canal that you have shaped mechanically for a case? It was like the last case that you showed that popped that anatomy. Yeah, how much sealer are you putting in the main canal that you've shaped mechanically for a case like this in order to get that accessory anatomy to be filled?
yeah, I use I couldn't tell you what gauge it is, but I use a very, very fine needle gauge. I use BC sealer and I flow it all the way up to the orifice, and then I place my cone. Um, Most of the time I compress uh, about mid-root, and then I start down packing with warm gutta percha. If the orifice or if the apical foramen is a little bit larger than I would like, then I won't compress all the way to mid-root, maybe 3/4 of the root, or I'll lateral it. But for the most part, sealer to the orifice.
Okay, it sounds like you're kind of touching on that right now, but we have other questions about obturation, like the hydraulic pressure to get the sealer through, which is you kind of touched on a little bit, but
Fine.
elaborate.
Fine canal that I barely had anything to go off of. I I just placed my 6K file down and got as much sealer as I could down that canal space. And then I actually flood the whole chamber with sealer. Then I take warm gutta percha and I just placed it until the whole orifice was covered. And then I hydraulically just take like a 911, just the largest condenser that's going to fit that orifice, and I just press down, press
That's a
apically.
squirt technique. That's basically what we call when we refer to squirt. And one of the things too, keeping in mind, the smaller the canal space, the more magnified the hydraulics will be. And that's why you're seeing some of those unfilled, uninstrumented cases, but they're clean, are being sealed all the way to the apex with a puff,
Mhm.
because they travel right down that clean canal space. And you back to your what you're using to place your sealer. I use a 29 gauge ultra dent Navi tip, and those work beautifully. You can inject the high flow out of those and then seat your cone right through that.
And do you take any cone shots or you do this only with files?
I don't take cone shots. I always get my um, post gentle wave working length with clean files and the apex locator. So that's where I fill to. So I don't take a post op unless I'm having some issue with, anatomy and I'm feeling something's a little strange. I'll get a cone fit. Otherwise, I don't.
Okay, I'm just gonna do run through two more questions and then we'll go ahead and end. How does it handle calcified canals? What is the minimum you need to open to?
Well, Peter, I think you might want to talk about that. You have beautiful cases. Minimum.
Well, the calcifications, I said before in my presentation, if it's too calcified, I don't trough for it. If there's a communication of some sort, I trust that Gentle Wave is going to take it there and clean it and debride it like it needs to. So if I need to forego instrumenting it, I will. Um, Minimum in terms of what I like to shape usually for something small like an MB2 would be a 1704. But I don't necessarily need to take that all the way. If there's any kind of communication with the NB1 at all, most of the time I just trust the Gentle Wave will do that, its part there.
Awesome. And just last one, are we confident that the sealer provides an adequate seal because the canals are clean? Also, is tug back less of an issue because we are relying on sealer to provide a seal?
Can I take that one real quick, Peter, and then I want you to finish or follow up. But I mean, we all learned that you can't. I mean, gutta percha doesn't seal, right? So what do we need for gutta percha to seal? Sealer. So whether we have the sealer advancing the gutta percha, which is ideal, what is actually doing the sealing? The sealer. So if we have sealer in an entire canal space, especially, we know BC does such a good job, but so does AH plus, then the answer to that question is a resounding yes. Absolutely. Sealer is what provides our seal in endodontic treatment. Without it, we have massive leakage.
Any other perspective, or do you have or you disagree with Kirk?
No, I'm all on board with that.
Awesome. Well, I know we went a little over today, but I did want to just thank you again to both our speakers. Just appreciate you both so much. For the people on the call, I'm just going to go ahead and make a call that we can certainly give you two CEs for tonight's webinar. We did go over, and just to honor that, we could definitely give you bump up that zero point 0.5 CE for your time here, and I appreciate that. I did just want to really quickly end with upcoming events. Like I had mentioned, this Endodontic Study Club meets on the third Wednesday of every month. However, AAE is next month. So we did go ahead and move that down a week. So our next study club is going to be on April 22nd with Dr. Adam Davis. We're going to be talking about predictability by design, the gentle wave case algorithm. He'll be talking about kind of his flow chart of how he kind of does his cases. And I think it's going to be really enlightening. So go ahead and scan here if you want to go and register for that one. I did want to talk about what's next as well. So for the next couple of months, we've got a Dr. Adam Davis's lecture in April. We also have Dr. Naja Usman's presentation about the endodontist as the quarterback. And then we're going to be with the amazing Michelle Allen and Krista out of Ballantine Endodontics, an amazing dental assistant and office manager talking about beyond the handpiece, team skills, new tech, and the endodontic patient experience. We'd love for you guys to join for that. Um, we please check back with us for upcoming in-person educational events. We just did some in Salt Lake and Fort Lauderdale, and we hope to have some more in-person hands-on courses. So check back to our website for that. And then, as we mentioned, we do have our new Flow Logic files designed to refine the role of the file. On your survey, you will be asked a question if that's something that you'd like to sample, and we'd love to get that out to your office. So just let us know in your survey, and we can get that to you. Again, thank you so much. Thanks for everyone who stayed on. I see that there's still 56 participants on, so I appreciate it. We will honor that 2CE, and I hope to see you back here in April. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to you all. Good night, and we'll see you soon.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.